Yeah, so yeah, I like those little points where it's like God sort of in a way is willing to change part of what he's doing.
Yeah,
That
it
just
is. It's and you wonder if you're gonna write this narratively and it doesn't fit the narrative. Like, why would you leave that in?
yeah.
If you're gonna fake it, why leave that in? Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that, even through some of my toughest times, I've never been able to say, like, oh, this is all fake.
Mhm.
Because there's just too many things in there that it's like, why leave that in there? Why would you have Moses, this man that didn't even want to go lead the Israelites out of Egypt and, has had all of his problems? Why would you have him having this exchange with God and God actually listening to him? What Moses is saying isn't wrong. He's like, you promised way back then that these were going to be your chosen people. Like, you promised this to Abraham and Israel. Like, you promised them these things. Why are you going to lead them out and then they do this thing and you go wipe them out? Moses isn't wrong. He's very bold to say it, but he's not wrong.
Yeah.
And then why listen to Abraham before that? Like, he could have just went and wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah,
That one
definitely.
interests me because I think God knew what was on Abraham's mind. Like, God's looking at that going, yeah, I know Lot and his family is there, but let's see, like, will Abraham say something? Will he not? And then he listens to the whole exchange. Like, everything Abraham has to say, God just listens. And it's like, that doesn't fit narratively at all, because you would think, you know, if you look at the Quran, Allah doesn't listen to any pleadings of man.
Hmm.
So
That's
that's why it's
interesting.
just like, I don't know. That one struck me a lot.
Yeah, that was probably the more confusing part of um, sort of that part of the Bible. That story is sort of confusing to me. I don't know exactly why. Um, I guess I just haven't really thought about it enough. Because usually that's the case with these things. You just need to think about it on your own and read it and continue to think. But so, what do you think about the intercession of the saints, and what was on your mind with that?
Well, it makes sense
Mhm.
because aren't the saints the disciples?
Well, I mean, the disciples are saints, so they were all canonized in the church. Uh, so they're people who are saints. Usually, they've performed miracles. They go get beatified in the church, then they're canonized. So there's like that process that they have to go through. Um, but anyone can be, and you're sort of encouraged to go through that, sort of try and be that saint, be on your own terms and try and become a saint in a way.
Right. Well, I mean, it does. It makes sense. Like, it's just, would you say that you shouldn't pray to Jesus, that you should pray to the saints instead? Like, because that's where it's a little iffy for me.
Yeah, so there's patron saints for many things. So there's patron saints for nurses, doctors, a lot of basically anything under the sun. So you can pray specific prayers to those saints for specific
Uh huh.
things. So uh, I don't know the saint for. Let me try and think of a patron saint. I can't think of one right now, but you there's prayers that are made, and you can pray those specific prayers for those saints, and you can ask for intercession through that, or for
Oh,
intercession from the saint specifically. So it's not always just based there in praying directly to Jesus.
hmm. No, that makes it's probably mostly just me because Presbyterian, like that whole thing. It's like
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
why that's why a lot of us are laughing that the Pope came out and said, "Well, just take your prayers to God right now," and then
yeah,
beat down the door of the church when we open it back up. But
yeah.
it's like we've been saying that for a long time, guys, and
Yeah,
rightfully so. So has the papacy. They came out and said, like, this is nothing new. We've just never had a reason to do it this way before. It's not like
yeah,
we're saying this is that you shouldn't have ever been doing it. Just there wasn't a reason before. Now there
yeah.
is.
I mean, what I'm sort of thinking of it is more of like a more intense examination of conscience. So to have a more or less valid sacrament of reconciliation, you have to have the examination of conscience prior to walking in. So you have to
Right.
sort of know what's going on inside of you and then be able to present it forward. So in a way, that's also like prayer. Um, you're meditating on that, and you can also pray before going to confession. Be like, give me the strength to confess these, or you can directly be like, hey, this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to me, it doesn't seem like he's saying that you would be absolved of them. You still have to have the sacrament. So when the church is open back up, that's time to go back in.
Right. But the reason that, like, and I'm not going to say Catholics are wrong for this, but the reason it seems wrong to me is you have that whole moment at the end of the death of Christ where the veil is torn in the temple. And it's like that veil was between the Holy of Holies and everyone else.
Yeah,
And it's like if you put something in between God and you, if you put anything in between that, it just doesn't seem right. So for me,
yeah,
if it's like you can't be absolved of your sins unless you go to confession, I'm like, I don't know about that because I'm not finding that biblically anywhere.
hmm yeah. Well, I mean, to me, without reconciliation, I feel like I almost can't be confident that I've been absolved. Because that's what I've been thinking. It's like, well, why do I like the church so much? Well, I like the sacraments, specifically reconciliation, because it gives me a direct confrontation, being like, okay, this is how it is, and these are your sins, but now you're okay. You're on better standing. I mean, you still had these issues, and they're not going to be totally forgotten, but they will be forgiven. So I see your point for sure, because it I see how it feels like a blockade, but it's not. I mean, we still can pray to Jesus if we want to, but just not that. We need, I guess, the extra boost of having someone else hear it and then be able to, someone who's married to the church. That's what a priest is. You're married to the church when you're ordained. So someone who's married to the church to bring that back up.
Right, and I can understand that, but it's like if if it's being taught that the priest is the one that's forgiving you of your sins, and I'm just like, No, that's the Jesus part. Like Jesus forgives you of your sins. If you take it before God and ask for forgiveness, you will be forgiven.
Yeah, I see that. But I mean, that just I don't think we'd be able to work past beyond that because it's I don't know, just different views of how things go. But I mean, this is sort of what I like about the how Protestants view things because I mean I like the sola. There's sometimes sola scriptura is useful because but it can also easily divide. So
Yeah. And and that's why I choose to say I don't think it's wrong. That's just a doctrine difference.
yeah,
Because even if you're going right before the priest and you're confessing these sins, well, God's still hearing it, right? I mean, you're still asking for forgiveness. God is still hearing it. You're just telling it to another person that's sitting next to you, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, either way you go about it, it's not wrong. It just feels wrong to me to put that extra layer in between that's like necessary.
yeah,
That's just because you have to understand why the temple thing is important. So, for Jewish custom, when you took your animals to sacrifice to the temple, you handed them to the priest, and only the priest was allowed behind the veil because that's where the Holy of Holies was. So, the priest goes behind the veil, sacrifices the animal on your behalf for your sins. So, that veil being torn means that there is nothing between the two any longer. And putting something between the two doesn't seem right to me.
yeah. That
But I'm
yeah,
not so sure that the Catholics teach it that way, that it's like, you know, there's a barrier between you and God and it's this priest.
yeah,
I don't think it's taught that way. So that's why I'm like, it just feels wrong to me. But I wouldn't be willing to say that Catholics are wrong for doing it because there's utility in it. I understand that. I really do.
yeah. Um, I guess another way that I think about it is not that I don't really think of it as a barrier. I just think of it as more of a it's a time where you can be directly present with, not necessarily the priest, but you're also, I sort of through the absolvence, it's sort of like you're with the Holy Spirit at that time, is sort of how I think of it. But
Okay.
I don't really think of it as a barrier. I think of it as, I almost think of the priest as a helper. He's sort of just boosting me up to get me over this fence, which is sin. So that's sort of
Okay.
how I mm, psychologically analyze confession.
That's just where Protestants would disagree with you, but that's okay too. We're all good people.
Yeah, I mean, there's benefits to all the camps. So,
Oh, yeah,
um,
there sure is.
like the Orthodox sort of have their own way of going about things as well. And same with Protestants and all their branches and crazy divisions that I have no idea how
Yeah.
they work.
Well, so I've probably told you this before, but that's the difference between Baptist and First Baptist. Original Baptists don't think it's a sin to drink alcohol or dance. First Baptists are just like, no, neither one of those
Oh my
ever for any
gosh.
reason. Yeah. And then the Second Baptists are like, hey, but we like the whole alcohol thing, so we're going to be Second Baptist now because we're against the dancing, but the alcohol is okay as long as it's in moderation. Yeah.
So which one were you a youth pastor
Baptist, Southern Baptist. So
of?
not
Okay.
First Baptist or Second Baptist.
Oh, okay. interesting. All right. Yeah, I was so oblivious of a lot of things that went on in Protestant churches, obviously. Like there was one day I was coming home from church and I saw a female priest and I was like, wait, what? She was like it was a May morning and it was like she was just out like uh at the end of service, I guess. And I just saw like the vestments and I was like, what's going on here? And then
Yeah.
when Paul said that he had a wife, I was like, oh my gosh, wait. It sort of blew my mind a bit, but I I found it very good to be on the Discord server just because I get to have so many more perspectives from so many different people and have my mind blown every week or so, or however often. Ooh, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay. I don't know what the heck happened there. It was on my end for sure. Yeah, so pastors are allowed to be married and told they should be married. So,
yeah, that. But the Orthodox priests can marry, but monks can't. Orthodox monks. So there's something interesting I learned recently.
yeah, well, it's different because I don't, our pastors are not meant to be physical representations of Christ.
Yeah,
They're just, they're essentially the mouthpiece for the message,
yeah, that's
you
it.
know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I said before that, they're married to the church. So
Right. And that is their, well, and that's a Christ thing because Christ will be married to the church.
yeah,
So it's very literal.
yeah, it is. Hmm. So what's another thing you might want? So what do you think you're gonna do for the joy video for this week?
I don't know. I'm trying to kind of work through that. Paul's last video he had was he mentioned something in First Peter
Hmm.
that I thought was kind of, and he used the Greek verbs for it, and like the word rejoice. Um, it's actually got its root word as joy. So there's something in First Peter, but I haven't really made it a lot past that yet
Hmm.
because I think there's a difference. Everybody keeps searching for this happiness thing, and it's like you're not always going to be happy.
Yeah,
Right now, there's a lot of people who aren't happy,
yeah,
and it's understandable. But it's like, how can you be joyful even when things like this are going on? You know?
yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, joy just seems when I think of it, it's like more of a lasting state, as you sort of
Right.
said. So it's just like a
Right. And that's what I had said somewhere on Discord. I don't remember where, but somebody was talking about happiness. And I said, happiness is like pain. It lasts only for a season, but joy is eternal.
yeah,
It's the
it's an
continuation of it.
embodiment more so. That's how I think of it. It's like
Right.
also being able to
Absolutely.
find the good things in bad.
Yep.
So yeah, I think your that series will be fun because there's so many weaving patterns that you can find in the Bible. Even though I'm like the most biblically illiterate person, I can sort of sometimes be like, oh yeah, there's that thing going on. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we're told how to be joyful, right? So, I mean, you can even go with Paul. Like Paul is writing all these letters to these churches in Corinth, Philippi, all these different places, right? He's writing these letters to these churches. Well,
Yep.
guess what he's doing while he's writing these letters? He's on house arrest. You know what house arrest was like back then? He sat in his home all day long, chained to 2 Roman soldiers.
Yeah, that's
Like, and he's writing all these letters, and he's saying, he, I mean, he's telling people how to be joyful, and it's like, dude, you are the last person that should be joyful right now. Like in our mind, we're thinking he's the last person that should be joyful, but in his mind, he's not, because he has that peace of mind, And it's like, how do you get to that point? Like, how do you make that concrete and real? Because right now, I think a lot of people are struggling to see where's the good in this. And people of faith can get really downtrodden right now and think, where is God in this?
yeah, definitely. I mean, the only little caveat is John Krasinski's been doing a little show on YouTube called Some Good News.
Uh-huh.
It's so great because he just does like these little things. Like prom was canceled for basically every high school, so he like did a virtual prom more or less for a ton of people, and it
That's
was
pretty
just like
cool.
it was so cool. I love seeing those because it's like, oh yeah, there's still some good things going on. And no, that's one reason why before I got into Jordan Peterson, I was sort of into Stoicism. I have always sort of liked that because it helps with figuring out you can where you can control things, but it's also like where you can find happiness and where you can sort of be happy and also but joyful. So
Yeah, because the happiness won't last forever.
yep.
I did like the way that Jordan Peterson describes it, though, when he says that, happiness is kind of weak because you're not always going to be happy. He's like, if you find it, great. But remember that it's like a stream. You can slip out of that stream. I think of it like a jet stream in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's very finite, and you can get in and out of that stream. You know, sometimes you get back in it, and sometimes you're flung out of it. And it's like, this is one of those times where there's a lot of people that have been flung out of that, and it's.
Yeah, for sure. It's been interesting just seeing like one of the things that it shows also the irritation that this I mean specifically the US but also the world has in the realm of politics. Everyone's sort of agitated and that was even before, but now it's even more so I'd say. So it's like that's the annoying part of this whole thing. It's like ooh, it's showing the crazy sides of some people though as well.
Yeah, it's like we have to pay attention to it. It's like before, you could be blind to the politics before, but now it's like you never know what your government's going to do, so now you have to pay attention to it.
Yeah,
It's like, this came right around the time where I was just trying to stop paying attention to politics altogether, and then
yeah,
this happens, and I'm like, oh, now I have to pay attention. Great.
yeah. I've always been a very for a year or so at this point. I've been very apolitical. Just sort of been like, meh, I really don't care for this stuff because there's so much wacky stuff going on and it won't really help me in any way more or less. It's just gonna make me more annoyed at the little things.
Right.
And yeah, but thankfully I'm not a very neurotic person to begin with, so that's been helpful in these past couple weeks.
I will say, though, most people are paying more close attention to their state politics and not federal politics at this point, which is kind of nice because that's if you're gonna pay attention, you should pay attention to state and not federal.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's a whole nother craziness.
Yeah, well, federal people are just morons when it comes to federal politics. Like, there's just no two ways around it. There's some of them I like, but they're still not all there together.
Yeah. So I was listening to your video with Jeff, and I found that pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I liked it because it was I was gonna listen to the full video of that you did with Bob and Kevin, I think, KG guy. Yeah, I didn't get all the way through. I didn't have enough time, but uh, that also sounded like it was gonna be a good one. But so you sort of went from agnostic. Oh wait, so you were still sort of agnostic at the point of when you were talking to Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Are you still like? Would you say you're still sort of in that camp, or
No,
no? Okay.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of had to rethink some of those positions.
Yeah.
After that talk with him, I kind of had to rethink some of those positions quite heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started making the theology videos, and
Mm-hmm.
that was just kind of the end of that whole endeavor, because it's like, no, I don't have a good argument against it anymore.
Yeah. I I was sort of hesitant to ask that because I don't like having to publicly really confirm anything for a lot of people.
Oh no, that's
Like,
fine that you asked.
because one time my mom asked me like, so what are your sort of feelings about all this stuff, like Catholicism and stuff like that? I was like, yeah, I guess I'm Catholic, but like I didn't like publicly confirming that. I was like, just why don't you just look at how I live my life more or less? Although that's not a good answer because people can't always see everything that you're doing. So
Yep.
and I just didn't like it because I was like, I have to say it became a binary question. I was like, oh, I don't like these.
Well, and it would make it like, I see why you asked the question, because it's like, well, I mean, you are putting out these theology videos, now you're doing a Sunday series, like,
Yeah,
because it
I mean, I
doesn't.
sort of knew your answer more or less already, but because I figured someone who's doing that and putting in a bunch of time would probably say yeah to such a question. So, but so you did, what was it, like three or so videos?
four
Four?
four of the theology videos, yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't looked at the other ones, the political ones, but
Yeah, don't look at them. They're like, I thought that's the direction I wanted to go, but then I started making these theology ones, and it's like, nope, those have spoken to me the most. Like, I've thoroughly enjoyed all of those.
yeah.
Really.
Yeah, well, that's probably the direction you should go then. So
Yeah. Like, I made the first one and put it out there and thought, if I get like 10, 15 views on it, I'll be happy.
yeah.
And it got more than that. So I was like, oh, okay. Because I enjoyed it, but I was debating just getting rid of my channel altogether.
Mm, yeah.
It's like, I want to do things that I enjoy and put them out there, but if other people aren't enjoying it too, then it's just a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, the counter argument to that would be, well, even if other people aren't watching it, you might as well just uh, do it for your own sort of thinking and processing of other things, I guess. I don't know. I mean, for
right.
this, it's theology, but yeah.
And then I came across Paul saying, like, Well, just make videos that you like. Like,
Yeah.
as long as you like them and you're enjoying it, just keep doing it. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I'll just keep the channel up and just put out content that I enjoy making.
Yeah. I mean, your videos have made me think about making my own channel. Uh, I don't know exactly what I'd put on it at the moment. Maybe I was thinking of doing like I want to get to know the saints better, so maybe like a series on different saints and other. I don't know exactly what else I would do though. That's the only idea that struck me at the moment.
Yeah. Generally, if you put out anything on your faith, your Catholicism, I'll watch it because I am
I'll at least have one viewer.
I am dead serious. Like, I am one of the most illiterate when it comes to that. I really am. It's the one I know the very least about.
Hmm.
And second is Lutheranism. I know very little bit about that too.
Mhm. Well, I don't really know much about any of the Protestant churches, so I barely know much about them. Because there's also so many of them that it'd take me a while to figure out what's
Oh
going
my
on.
gosh, yeah, there's like Seventh Day Adventists, Presbyterians. Like, the only thing you need to know about Presbyterians is we Baptists dunk you when we baptize you. Presbyterians like fling water at you. We call them sprinklers
Hmm.
because they sprinkle water on you to baptize you.
Yeah.
We Baptists are like, no, you're filthy. We're gonna dunk you.
You don't get a sprinkling, you need more.
That's right.
Yeah, we do I think it's I think there's like it's almost like a little thing that you dip in and then you basically just rinse it onto the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's different though with RCIA and those people who are older that are being baptized, but with babies, that's how it sort of is. I don't remember exactly how it goes for uh, people who are coming in later in the game, I guess you could say. But and then also babies have you there's specific garb that they're given for the
Mm-hmm.
babies. I haven't seen a baptism in a while though. So would
Well,
have
I'm
seen
just gonna
one
say,
would have seen one in Easter, but
right. Well, I'll tell you, the Baptists have it right because if you read the text, Jesus goes down to the river and John the Baptist baptizes him in the river. So
yeah,
we're the
I mean
ones that have it right.
that's how Orthodox I think do it as well. They do a full dunk
Mm-hmm.
as well. I wonder where the change was. That's now I'm sort of interested where that change happened in the sacrament.
Oh no, I don't
Well,
know
I
why. I don't know why Presbyterians are sprinklers. Like,
mean,
I don't, I don't know. Some of the stuff I just don't understand.
well, I'm sure if there's a difference between the Orthodox and the Catholics, that means that at some point there was a time when they obviously had the same, and what was the same, and when did it change? I'm assuming that I don't know exactly. So, sure, it was one of the ecumenical councils
Probably.
somewhere in there, but there's been a ton of those, and I haven't read any of them, so that's on my to-do list though.
See, and then once you read them and you know more about them, sure, post 30-minute snippets about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you distill it down to a 30-minute summary of what that was and why it changed, or what was the biggest change that occurred here? You know.
Yeah, that'd be tough though. Probably a bunch of reading, and I'll have to see. Maybe in the summer. That's probably my goal. Either way, I'm gonna wait till the semester's over, so before I do this dive. into something.
Well, you'll have at least one viewer because I'll watch it. I like gaining knowledge I didn't have before.
Well, that's that should be the goal for most people. And I
Yeah, but a
think
lot of people aren't that way.
I think that's the most beneficial way to operate though. Is to always look for openness and just expanding how you view things.
Right? Because like I've seen a couple with I I'm not always on Randos United watching them, but I did see a couple with Luke recently. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he's a universalist. Like I knew he had said that, but never really paid attention to what he meant by that until I watched a couple of his videos. And then Sam Adams, he came back
Yeah.
and he's had a couple more on Unitarian. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, what does he mean by Unitarian? So I watched a couple of his and I was like, these are viewpoints I didn't know a lot about. Like I've heard little snippets here and there about them, but didn't know a lot. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I I still haven't figured out Charlie's or no, oh, sorry. I still haven't figured out Sam's sort of I haven't figured out what exactly he goes about with that. I watched like two or three of his videos and I still was like, hold on. What's going on here? I guess it's I don't know, probably some mental block. But it was interesting to listen to. And I also listened to about 30 minutes of Luke's last time on the randos with Shelley, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I actually sort of figured out what he meant by universalism. So, and that was also a very interesting perspective. And
I found it refreshing from him because just the honesty of him saying, I can't back it up biblically, but this is how I feel. I
yeah,
was like, I get that. Like, I do. I understand. I don't see anywhere in text where you get there because I'm the same way. I don't believe in eternal damnation.
yeah, mm-hmm.
Like, I know that's hard to say because I'm Baptist and they're all about that fire and brimstone and going straight to hell and staying there. But I
yeah,
don't believe in that. But I can't find anywhere in the text that backs it up either. So him saying that, I was like, okay, so it's not just me. Thank God. And then Sam, I think I got to where he's at on the Unitarian side. It makes sense to me to not be pantheist and think that all three of the representations of God are separate beings. Like,
mm-hmm.
I get where he's coming from with that. I also see how in the text you could interpret it as all three of them are separate attributes of God, but there's only one God.
Yeah,
So, like, you might be able to see where attributes that Jesus had were not the same as attributes that God the Father expresses in the text. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, I got you. Um, yeah, I guess it's like I've never known that there was a Unitarian position until Sam brought it up, and I was like, wait, how does this even happen? But that's
Yeah, I had heard of it, but I'd only heard of it in Pentecostal churches. There's like the Pentecostal, which is Pentecostal oneness.
mhm,
And then, there's First Pentecostal, which is like, no, we believe in the Trinity, but, everything else about Pentecost is fine with us. We just believe in the Trinity instead of a unitary position. That's the only way I'd ever heard it. So when Sam laid it out, I was like, I see how you can get there from the text. Like, but that is a very, very weird position to be in because that puts you, at least when it comes to the Jesus factor, that puts you lining up with with the Muslim belief about Jesus, which is he was just a man that was exalted to the highest position by God, or the second highest position by God. And it's like, so they treat him like Elijah or Elisha, which were both prophets, and God took them both up to heaven in physical form. Like they didn't have to die.
Oh, okay.
So that's how Islam sort of treats the character of Jesus, like, oh, he was a prophet that was exalted to the right hand of God.
Okay. That's interesting.
And that's kind of where Sam sees it. He's like, Jesus was a man that existed. God used him while he was here on earth and then exalted him to the highest form. And that's why he thinks, or second highest form, sorry. That's why he says it's okay to call him the Son of God. It's okay to worship him, because the text says all these things about Jesus, but it never specifically says that Jesus was in heaven before being born on earth. That's where he gets the universal thing from.
I'd like to, that'd be interesting to see like his position and like the virgin birth and how that sort of works with Mary. And I wonder about his position on Mary overall.
Oh no, he believes in immaculate conception.
Okay.
Like he's not sure that Mary would, like, I know there's a school of thought that says Mary was immaculately conceived as well, right?
Yeah,
I've heard that.
I've heard of
So
that too. I think so the I think a Catholic position would be that Mary was I'm sort of trying to remember if I have this correct, but I think it's that she was born without sin as well, and I think that is also a Catholic teaching.
right. So his idea would be, from what I understand from him, that may not be necessarily the truth, but that God, looking into the future, saw that there was going to be a birth of someone great.
Yeah.
Kind of like, well, if you look at Job, what does God have to say about Job when he's talking to Satan? You know, when he tells him, have you considered my servant Job? He says, there's no one else like him on the earth. And he goes through all these list of things that Job is, which makes him a good, upstanding, righteous man. So what I see from Sam's position is that he might think that Jesus was going to be like that already. So God just infused Mary with his spirit, impregnated her through the Holy Spirit, and Jesus was born that way and then exalted to the highest position because he was sinless. Whereas, you know, the counter position is it was the Immaculate Conception, which made him sinless because he's fully human and fully God.
Yeah. Okay.
But their stumbling block that they keep coming up on is John chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. Because
yeah.
that's, you know
I
what
think he
that is, right?
just posted a video about John 1.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to watch it
Yeah.
yet. But
Yeah. I think it was
that's
like
like,
half an hour before we started, so.
that's the one stumbling block that Unitarians come across all the time. It's like, how do you explain that? And I don't want to give him any ammo for his arsenal. I can tell him how he can explain it, but I don't want to do that for him. I want him to have to really think about that position.
No ammo for you, Sam.
That's right.
That's okay. Yeah, I never, but Luke's position clicked with me pretty quickly. Like once he sort of laid it out, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I see why
Yeah,
people would think that way. And
yeah.
I think the Catholic doctrine is more of like an in-betweener because not everyone's saved, but not everyone goes to hell. And then there's also purgatory. So, and yeah, so it's not all fire and brimstone though. So
That's the Baptist thing, and I still like my contention with that is okay, you die supposedly under their doctrine, you die, your spirit goes to one place or the other, right? But what about final judgment? Like, are you dragged back out of hell into heaven for final judgment? Like, because that's the part that it's like it doesn't, those two things don't marry up. Because if you go to hell permanently, like, do you go back to heaven to be judged again? Like,
judge
there's
twice.
a final judgment where everybody is, right? It's
Yeah,
like, where do you go? Where's that in between? Can you get into heaven without final judgment? Like, or is there a space in between where you're just in limbo until final judgment happens? Like, see,
yeah,
and nobody can explain that. So it's like, I'm on the fence about it. That's the one thing that makes me against eternal damnation. It's like,
yeah,
you can't show me textually where it says you go to hell and you stay there forever. So
yeah.
I'm like, nope.
Yeah, and that's all that Protestants have to go on. That's also like why I like there's the nice thing about the catechism is that we can just be like, oh well, here's this other source. So and then yeah, I don't know where I was gonna go.
It's there's some beauty in the way you guys do things because you're just like, I don't know, just like straight up.
Yeah.
Catholics will tell you, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'd say in this position as well.
You're just like,
uh,
I don't know, and I'm okay with not knowing.
yeah, it's like
And
I'll
it's
just
like, that is
try
a
and
fantastic answer.
it's a very useful one. It's one I like to say a lot. I don't have to draw my I don't have to draw my lines or I don't have to draw many lines in the sand. That's how I like to think of it. It's like I don't have to put my finger down and be like, okay, this is where I'm drawing the line. It's like I have very few lines.
Well, and you shouldn't have to, right? Because what is the root of faith? Faith is a hope in things unseen, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, like, you're just hoping beyond all hope that this is the most correct thing. And it's like, that's what my faith is based on. Sorry if you disagree or have questions that I don't have the answer for, but I don't have to entertain those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, more or less.
And just be okay with that.
Yeah, it's just be a good person, figure things out as you go along as best you can. But there's always going to be things that who knows.
I don't know. And that's where I get to with like when I used to watch I've watched all the Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson conversations that they had, all four of them.
Yeah,
I'm like, you don't get it, Sam. You have to agree. You have to find what is for you so that you get to what you ought to do about it. And Sam's just like, no, I'm not going to find what just is. And then he finally gets around to it when he writes The Moral Landscape, right?
yeah,
He's like, there is a better mode of being.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, says you. It's
yeah,
like, there's people that's not going to agree with you.
yeah,
You know, there are people out there on the fringe that don't agree. So it's like the is has to be something concrete. And for most people, that's Christianity or that's Judaism or that, you know, they find that is. It's like, okay, God is. Now, what am I supposed to do about that? Sam Harris just replaces God with well being. Like, I've
yeah,
read several of his books and I listened to the Waking Up podcast a lot. Even though I don't agree with the guy, I still listen because I want to know where he's at. And that's where he is. It's like he wants Christianity stripped of the metaphysics.
yeah,
And it's like, Sam, you can't do that. It doesn't work. It's like
yeah.
it
When
just
I
really doesn't.
yeah, um, there is Yeah, I read like the first 30 pages of The Moral Landscape. It was That was interesting. It was a lot of it. I was like, where are you going with this? It didn't seem like he was putting anything, and he was just making unnecessary binary decisions on things, which I don't like.
Yeah.
And and so another thing that was interesting that I was trying to connect recently was I've been reading this book about human history, uh, and they were talking about the how technology evolved and how some civilizations were more technologically advanced and how it operated basically. And one thing that I found interesting was there is always a necessity for technology, but you have to be convinced that there is that necessity. So there was this example that they gave where there was this circular stone that they found on Crete. It was like
Mm-hmm.
a wheel, and it was solid clay. And this person made all of these stamps and stamped into the clay basically like their alphabet. But so then why didn't this alphabet continue to be used in Crete? And why did, these ancient Greek alphabets become dominant instead of this one on Crete? And so it's like in these times, people had to be convinced, oh, this is a useful thing. They didn't need an alphabet. They didn't really need it at the time. They didn't need written language at that time on Crete. So that
Mm-hmm.
was like, so how does this work with modern world? Because we're almost always convinced that, oh, I need this thing. I mean, that's like the whole point of advertising, that, oh, I need this new technological thing. So and then when do people decide not to? And I was like, well, how does that work with religion? Because in most religions, people are like, well, I don't need this. Like most monks or Christian monks, mystics, just were like, I'm done with all of this stuff. Like Saint Francis, he was like, I'm giving up everything and just going out into the woods, and I'm gonna hang out with birds and squirrels, and and that was I haven't really connected the dots yet on that sort of question of technology, but
And I think we talked about that in the voice chat before. It's like, how do you make it concrete, and how do you convince people that it is something that they need?
yeah,
Because it's got to be. Most people are utilitarian in those kind of things. It's like, for some reason they'll spend money on stuff that they don't really need, and that yet they've somehow convinced themselves that they need it. But it's like the one thing you actually need, you can't convince yourself that it's necessary for you. And yeah, I see Sam doing that a lot, but then he kind of backs off the argument. He's like, I need something, and here's what it is. So he just reterms God as well-being. And just like Jordan tells him, he's like, if you read through the Moral Landscape, the book that you wrote, Sam, you've got an idea of what heaven is, and you've got an idea of what hell is.
yeah,
And he really does. He lays it out.
yeah. Even in the first 30 pages, he
But he just
more or
wants
less.
to strip the metaphysics. And it's like, Sam, you can't. Your whole morality that you're using to write this book, The Moral Landscape, has the metaphysical underpinning underneath it already. And you just refuse to look at it. You're like, no, I'll just pick up the house off the foundation, and the house is just going to float here. It's like,
Yeah.
no, Sam, it won't. It's like that foundation that you're standing on,
Yeah.
that is your picture of heaven. It's like, dude, that's Christianity. It's been there all along. It's like, you
Yeah.
just,
He
you
seems
want
like
to,
he would be he's sort of like into, since like with his meditation stuff, he seems like really into the woo of spirituality, I guess. But then it's also like, how are you not like totally materialist with this issues? Because that's sort of like where he goes when he had to strip the metaphysics. It's like, what are you left with? And that's been something.
Yeah, what he's left with is a house that he hopes stays afloat, but it won't because it's not.
Yeah, and
I
that's
read that and I was like, oh my gosh. And then then I knew where Jordan was going when he was having an interview with somebody else and they were talking about, him and Sam Harris are going to have these debates. And somebody said something about Sam Harris as an atheist. He's like, yeah, we'll see about that. It's like, I know what you're saying, Jordan. Like, I get it because he likes to pretend that he is, but really he's not.
yeah, and what I hope Paul looks into some of his stuff. I don't think, Sam is a very deep thinker. Uh, he definitely isn't. Yeah, I don't think he's very much of a deep thinker. He can definitely use his brain, but he keeps on treading on the same thing. His brain is like in a hamster ball. He just keeps on
Yeah.
going around. And
And that's why I didn't mind Paul kind of slapping him around a little bit because what he was coming out against him about is his so archaic kindergarten understanding of Christianity. Like Sam won't do the same. Like I try to take his arguments as seriously as possible, but Sam won't take the arguments of Christianity seriously. He just goes back to the straw man of what he thinks Christianity is and fights the straw man. And it's like,
yeah,
you just
uh,
don't.
yeah, I guess that's where I'm okay with Paul sometimes getting a little bit aggressive with him because it's like, well, I mean, then he also, when I sort of brought this up to him in the voice chat when he came on, I think it was Saturday, uh, and but now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, it's okay. I'm still okay with people bashing atheists.
Well, I mean, if that's what he's bashing him on, because
Yeah,
you see him do it over and over again, and I understand that can be frustrating because, like, even if I've met atheists who are just like, yeah, we're fine with Christians,
yeah,
like, and they don't bash them for what they believe. They're just like, well, that's just not me. But I understand Sam has to because he's part of the new atheist group, which
yeah,
now isn't that new, but it's, it's kind of
yeah,
his point of he has to do that. Like he feels like he has to attack Christianity because it's, as he calls it, a mind virus. And it's like, but Sam, everything you're saying about well-being is just the exact same thing. You just want to rephrase it because for whatever reason you have a problem with this Jesus character. And it's
yeah,
like, I don't see how other people don't see that.
yeah. And I mean, very few atheists that are on the Discord server, they're always great. I don't know how they tolerate all the craziness of what we're doing, but
Well, because they're not that type of atheist.
yeah, yeah. That I mean, that is how it is. But okay,
Even I wasn't. I like to be good to people. Like it pays. It pays in spades to just be as good as you can to people.
yeah, mm, yeah. I'm trying to think. So I found that still want to finish reading The Moral Landscape just because I want to figure out really his points. And I think I explained sort of part of my project is I have a little bit of a project to look at maps and sort of in a way have it's not like a moral landscape because I also want to I don't know exactly how to describe it. I'm trying to feel like my description's failing, but that's sort of I just want to see. Oh, here it is. Okay, it's sort of like mapping stories, and this is why I like Paul because he always is talking to different people, and they all share their story with him, and so he's basically he's doing a bit of the legwork for me in a way, because a lot of what I want to do is to see how people's stories work because everyone sort of has a story and we all operate in a story and that's sort of something that Jordan has talked about before
Mm-hmm.
that our life is a story and maybe I could see if I can map it in a way. I mean, I can use a map analogy for a lot of things just like in someone's life like you have your own map and you're walking around and sometimes you have no idea where you are and but sometimes you bump into someone who has they have this chunk of the map and I can sort of
Mm-hmm.
draw it down. But I guess my thought is to try and get a giant collection of maps and stick them together. But I don't know how well that will work. I don't really know how to do that.
Well, that's so cool about the videos that he does, right? Like you're talking, he talks to so many different people.
Yeah.
And then the Randos United ones too. It's like if Luke didn't talk to as many people as he had and put out, finally, we can understand what his position is, right?
Yeah.
Because if he didn't do that, then you wouldn't know and you couldn't look and go, oh, hey, well, that kind of makes sense. There's a little bit of that map that goes here that fits this bit.
Yep.
And, same thing with Sam, like listening to him have these conversations with people. It's like, oh, there's a little bit of that universalism or Unitarianism that I understand. It's like, there's that little bit of that map that I was looking for that meets over here. Or me listening to Paul doing his talk about same-sex marriage. It's like, had he not brought up First Peter, it's like, oh, I've been thinking about joy. Here's that little bit that fits what I was talking about over here.
Yeah.
And then everybody keeps I put up the last few videos I've put up, people have been like, oh, hey, here's this little thing that you didn't mention in your video. And I'm like, oh, see, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
It's like completely pertains to this.
Yeah. That's
So
what I
it's like
love about the
next time I
server.
talk about it, I can do that.
Yeah. That's what I love about the server is almost everyone's like really high in openness. They're just like ideas, 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 and it just like keeps on going, and it's great. Everyone's always easy to talk to for that reason as well. I don't think I've ever really had a bad faith conversation on there, or very. I don't know. I can't think of one right now. Like I don't think it's really happened.
I haven't personally.
Yeah, it's always been great on there. I was thinking about like my relation to the server because in a way it was the only reason why I got on there was because I complained about a different server on the Jordan Peterson subreddit because it was associated. So I was hoping that maybe the mods from there would see it. I don't know why, what I was really thinking. But then Joe messaged me and was like, here's the invite to this server. Maybe you'll like it. And I hadn't even watched a Paul Vanderklay video. So I got here sort of weirdly, but it's been a good fit.
Yeah, I got there kind of weirdly too because I was, me and Voth have been friends for a while on Twitter,
Yeah.
and he's like, oh, hey, here's this video where they mention me, and it's him talking to Andrea, and I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, oh, okay, cool, I'll go watch it. And then I was like, what's this thing he's talking about? And he's like, oh yeah, it's a Discord server. It's linked down in the video description. I was like, oh, awesome. I'll go check it out. I'm an old dude. I don't know anything about this Discord. So I go check it out, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of cool people here. Okay.
Yeah. And whenever I like switch to other Discords, because I'm on some other servers, it's like, oh, because it's not like it's very much not a normal Discord server. I always sort of think of like, what do the like people like, if there were the developers of Discord looked at all of the different servers, they'd come if they ever came across ours, they'd be like, this is weird. Like it doesn't compare at all to the other ones.
Right. Like, this does not compute. Why this one?
Yeah.
Then they might look at it and go, oh, wait a minute. These people are doing like what we designed this service to do.
Yeah, well, maybe. That would be cool. But oh, sorry, four. Does your recording tell you how long we've been going?
No, but I can see what time it is.
Okay. I don't remember exactly when we started because I was goofing with the invite. I couldn't figure it out.
We've been going a little over an hour. Let me see here.
Yeah, probably a little bit. I think it was like
It
3:10.
looks like you started sending those to me at exactly 2 o'clock. So
Yeah,
2 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock your time.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we've been going a little over an hour.
Okay. I'm gonna see. Do you have any extra to say? I'm trying to think because usually they're around an hour, so I don't want to.
No, I really didn't. I think we're pretty good.
Okay, wonderful. I'll stop the recording.